take one more step towards you. 'Cause all that's waiting is regret. Don't you know I'm not your ghost anymore? You lost the love I lost. Take on here you're asking all around if I am anywhere to be found. And who do you think you are? Took so long just to feel alright. Remember how to put back the buttons. I wish I had missed the first time. You don't get to get me. From the outside, it's so drink, stepping wings you need. Highest floor of the Bowery. Nowhere higher, somewhere along the line. We stopped seeing eye to eye. You were staying out all night. No, No, I don't where you've been, gone, but I know you'll be on you outside of the morning. You when the sun just sits. Oh, it ain't you. Down on the boundary. Down, yes, it ain't. I know you don't like it, though. It ain't me. I had a dream. We were back at 17. Summer nights, summer 18. Never grow. The phone. But dark side of the morning. It ain't me. No, 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 no. Honey came in and she called me red-handed, creeping with the girl next door. Now picture this, we were both butt naked, banging on the bathroom floor. How could I forget that I had given her an extra key? All this time she was standing there, she never took her eyes off me. How could you grab the woman access to your pillow, just pass around a witness while you're clinging to your pillow? Better watch her back before she turn into a killer. This for the situation, ought to call the beaner. To be a true player, got to know how to play. If she say a night, convince her say a day. Never admit to a word that she say. And if she claims you tell her, baby, no way. But she called me on the counter, saw me banging on the sofa. I even had her in the shower. She even got me on camera. Saw the walks on my shoulder, heard the words that I told her, and other screams getting louder. She said until it was over. Honey came in and she got me red-handed, creeping with the girl next door. Now picture this, we were both butt naked, banging on the bathroom floor. How was I to keep her from what she was about to see? Why should she believe me when I told her it was not me? Make sure she knows it's not you, lead her on the right fix. Whenever you should see her make a gigolo flex. Funny as a bee by you, it's not that complex. Seeing is believing, so you better change your specs. You know she won't be worried about the things from the past. How they reconnect and then she go to new to mass. Wait for your answer, go over there. But if she back a gun, then run first. But she got me on the counter, saw me back She said until it was over. Oh, oh, oh. Gotta tell her that I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused. I've been listening to your reasons, they make no sense at all. Gotta tell her that I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused. You may think that I'm a player, but I'm completely lost. Woo! Honey came in and she called me red-handed, creeping with the girl next door. Now picture this, we were both butt naked, banging on the bathroom floor. How was I to keep her from what she was about to see? Why should she believe me when I told her it wasn't me? It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Yeah, it wasn't me. No, it wasn't me. No, you thinking of some other girl. Wasn't me. No, it wasn't me. No, 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 it wasn't me.
close no matter how far. I never gave much more from the heart. Forever trusting who we are, and nothing else matters. Never opened myself this way. Life is ours and we live it always. All these words I just don't say. Well, nothing else matters. Trust I seek and I find in you. Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view. And nothing else matters. Never cared for what they do. Never cared for what they know. But I know. So close no matter how far. Never gave much more from the heart. Forever trusting who we are. Yeah. Oh, and nothing else matters. Trust I seek and I find in you. Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view. And nothing else matters. Never cared for what they do. Never cared for what they know. But I know. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. ¿Cómo está? Awesome, awesome. Wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for making time this morning to come to the auditorium for our Welcome Back Day for 2024. Can you believe that? It's 2024. When I first started and had a first conversation with all of you, do you remember what we were going to have by 2024? Say it out loud. 11-4 by 2024. You remember that? Guess what? We're getting super close. We're getting close. And that is due to the hard work of all of you. Thank you so much for how you have chosen to serve our students, serve each other, and serve this community. It's my privilege today to welcome all of you back and to welcome to our Welcome Back Day members of our boards of trustee. We have Trustee Michael Reeves is with us this morning. Trustee Michael Adams is here this morning. And I'm certain that all of the rest of the board send their greetings to you. We are in various stages of working, and some folks are recovering, as I'm sure you all are encountering as well. I did want to take a moment to say, if you're paying attention to the CDC, we're kind of in the middle of a big uptick right now in the trifecta, right? It's not just COVID, it's RSV, and it's, what's the other one? Help me. Oh, the flu, right? How can you forget the flu? Please be careful with yourself. Practice self-health care. Make sure that you're resting, all of those things that your mom would tell you to do. But also know we still have supplies of masks, we have hand sanitizers, and we have COVID tests that if you are in need of those supplies, please just let us know. Contact HR and we'll make sure that you get those things and you have them for your use. So we want to make sure that we keep all of you and our students safe as we make it through this cold and flu season. So welcome back. It's my privilege to announce and introduce to you our Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Kathy Bakit.
Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Here, that makes sense, huh? Let's see if we can lower this just a tad. Yeah, okay. So thank you for taking the time to be here today. I am really thrilled about today's presentations and plans. I'm a geek. I get excited when we have opportunities to meet great minds and exchange ideas on all sorts of topics, and especially focusing on teaching and learning. And so I am so thrilled to be with you. And I have to say, I'm feeling a little pressure with Dr. Zillett emphasizing again the 11-4 by 2024. So we're working towards that. But you know, you make it happen. The students come to see the faculty, and with the support of the staff and the administrators, but the faculty is the key. And so thank you for all your work to make this happen. We're going to go ahead and get started on the slides. Can you move the slides, please? All right, thank you. First slide. So I'm not going to be long because I know you're anxious to get going with your program, but I feel that it's important to emphasize a couple of things, especially around the landscape we work in. And so I'm going to talk about three things: the landscape with the Vision 2030, current status of enrollments and retention, and then focusing on what we're going to be doing for spring semester, but also potentially in fall 24. So next slide, please. If you've been in the community college system for a while, you would know, or I'm sure you've heard of Vision 2020. So almost 10 years ago, the Chancellor's Office, they did a whole bunch of research around how do we get the students to complete or be successful. And so as a result of that, they generated a Vision 2020. And so for the past 10 years, that has been a guiding framework for our work. And they provided us also with specific metrics, number of, and we track them, again, as you all are aware, we track the number of students that graduate, number of students transfer, some number of students who receive degrees, number of students who are placed in jobs, advancement in salaries, the achievement gap. And so that has guided our work for the past 10 years. And so for the past couple of years, with the changes in administration, the Chancellor's Office and the Governor's Office, that work continued through Vision 2022 and the Governor's California, the roadmap for California. And now, for the past year and a half, the Chancellor's Office has been going around the state and sharing their plans. Again, the next framework that will guide our work for the coming years, and that framework is Vision 2030. And so that has not been 100% finalized because they're still receiving feedback on it, but for the most part, it's pretty settled. And so I wanted you to be aware of it and to know what this framework is about, because again, it provides a context for everything we do. The Vision 2030 has three goals: equity in success, equity in access, and equity in support. And in case you haven't guessed it, equity has to permeate and penetrate everything we do. Everything we do has to be examined with the lens of equity. The Vision 2030, has 6 outcomes with their metrics, and they have 3 strategic directions. The next 3 slides will provide a lot of detail on those metrics and the directions. And I'm not going to go, wait, let's go ahead with the next slide, please. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I do want you to be aware of them, and we can provide the slides later. The first strategic direction, as you see at the very top, is equitable baccalaureate attainment. And so you all probably heard that AVC now, and congratulations to our faculty and the deans who coordinate this work, and Dr. Zillett with her tenacious support We have been approved for the respiratory care baccalaureate degree, and so no, we're one of very few campuses. Yes, yes, I agree. Very few campuses, probably less than a handful that have the 2 degrees. And so that focus is going to continue for the system to expand possibilities for additional baccalaureate degrees. And know that I know it can be controversial, the whole topic, because why have UCs and CSUs if we're gonna do degrees here? With the findings, the research is finding that the students who come to community college to get their baccalaureate degrees are a different type of student. We're serving a different type of student. And so the message around that is starting to get out, that we are in the community college baccalaureate degree, we're serving a different population. So that's one of the strategic directions. Next slide, please. Next is equitable workforce and economic development. And so, again, I'm sure you're aware, the focus has been on preparing our students for the jobs. And as industry, if can make your head spin, because things are changing so quickly. All you have to do is look at AI, and literally some jobs are gonna, or people will lose their jobs if they're not AI trained in some fields. And so it is so important, the talk now, and we'll talk about AI in a little bit. The talk is, how do you adapt to that, and how does education adapt to it? But that's just an example of the change in the industry and business environment, because ultimately we want to prepare students that are going to be ready to take on job and stay in them and be successful at them. Specifically, the big several areas, if you wish, that the focus is going to be on is how. I didn't do that. Sorry about that. It's going to be healthcare, aging population. So there's a huge need for healthcare workers. Climate action, extremely important. STEM, because you can't do healthcare and climate action without STEM students. And then in terms of education, preparing teachers and faculty for to be the labor force that will train those students. So equitable workforce and economic development. Next slide, please. Number 3 is the future of learning. And as I shared a minute ago, things are changing quickly, and we need to stay adaptable and flexible and adjust with the changing technology. Specifically, I was kind of surprised, honestly, when I heard about this a couple of months ago, that the Chancellor's office is actually focused on how does AI change teaching and learning. And so that's going to be a focus, and there's going to be analysis on the impact of generative AI technology and how do we participate in it. So those are the 3 strategic directions that the Vision 2030 is focused on. Next slide, please. In terms of AVC here, I am pleased to share that compared to last spring, we are up approximately 18.5% in terms of enrollment, FTES. And the data is as of yesterday, so we're 5 days out from the beginning of the semester. So we are on our way, but we still, we still have some work to do. And I want to emphasize one thing. If you're in business and you talk to business people, a question they frequently ask is, how much does it cost you to bring a customer in? And they have numbers. So the next question is, are they repeat customers? And if they're not repeat customers, then your revenue is going to be constantly drained to acquire additional customers. Applying the same kind of analysis in terms of strategy, we can put a lot of effort into going out and doing outreach and onboarding students and getting them in. But if we can't figure out how to improve our retention, how to hold on to them, through instructional support and through wraparound student services that are available to support them, we want to definitely uphold the standard without a question. We want to uphold the standard. That's not a question of watering down the content and giving easy A's and passing them, but rather how do we get to where the student is so we can help them at the point where they are about to say, you know what, maybe that's not for me. And especially because the more and more of our students are going to be adult learners. So next slide, please. So moving forward to help us achieve the goals of 11.4 by 2024, we're going to meet hopefully where the students are at, provide instructional support, and also focus on some legislative mandates that are, I'm sure you're aware of, such as AB 1111 and AB 928, and those are going to be implemented right away. And there's a lot more, but I just focused, I chose to focus on these three things. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I hope you find this helpful, and thank you for paying attention and listening. And now I will turn it over to Professor Hal Huntsman, Academic Senate President. Thank you again.
Good morning. Welcome to spring 2024. I keep thinking 2023, so I have to be careful. It's interesting. I hope you all had a great holiday and that you got some rest, well-deserved, and that you spent some time with your families. I know I did. I take the opportunity usually now to get to see my father, who's just turned 90 this last year, and I think how many more holidays do I have with him, and every year I treasure them. So I hope you all treasure your families and had that opportunity. It's interesting because Dr. Bakit really highlighted many of the issues that I was thinking about, and I really just want to say that the issues and the challenges that we're facing as a college are things that we can only succeed on if we work together, and if we're collaborating, and if we're knowledgeable, and really, bringing all the ideas forward. I think that you know enough about me and the work that I'm trying to do with the Academic Senate to know that I really treasure all of your ideas and really want to hear all of your voices. One of the really important things that I would say for today is that there are several sessions this afternoon which really address many of the issues that are that Dr. Bakit highlighted, including the AB 928 and 1111 session that I'm giving later this afternoon. Also, we're having sessions on AI. Our faculty member, Norma Jones, who is really an expert on the issue, has been working with our Senate work group on AI issues and is having a great workshop this afternoon. And there are many others that really address the issues that are facing us as a college, and I hope that you're able to attend, and I look forward to hearing your voices. I'd now like to introduce our union president, Dr. Jason Bowen.
Good morning. Thank you, Hal, and thank you, President Zillette, for giving me the opportunity to present for 5 minutes, not 10 minutes, 5 minutes this morning. First of all, I'd like to say that today is January 5th. It's my grandfather's birthday. He's 95 years old today. He doesn't know that I'll be visiting today, but I will. Last night, I watched the movie Lincoln. It was a life-changing movie, and I'm going to watch it again. I watched it at the suggestion of a friend, and I appreciate the suggestion, especially in light of some comments that were made fairly recently Good morning, Happy New Year, by the way. So a politician seeking the nomination of President of the United States from a major political party was asked at a town hall meeting what the cause of the United States Civil War was. They gave a long, meandering reply, as these things go. Following the reply, the individual who asked the question noted that not a single time, not once in that long reply, was slavery mentioned. This is noteworthy because slavery is the single overarching reason for the secession of the slave-holding states, the so-called Southern states, so-called Confederate states, from the Union. As was made clear by the seceding states themselves. Texas, the Lone Star State, published a declaration of the causes which impelled the state of Texas to secede from the federal union. In it, the reason for secession was made very clear, and I quote, "In all the non-slave holding states, in violation of that good faith and comity which should exist between entirely distinct nations, the people have formed themselves into a great sectional party, now strong enough in numbers to control the affairs of each of those states, based upon an unnatural feeling of hostility to these southern states and their beneficent and patriarchal system of African slavery, proclaiming the debasing doctrine of equality of all men, irrespective of race or color, a doctrine at war with nature, in opposition to the experience of mankind, and in violation of the plainest revelations of divine law. They deemed the abolition of Negro slavery throughout the Confederacy the recognition of political equality between the white and Negro races, and avowed their determination to press on their crusade against us so long as a Negro slave remains in these states. By the secession of 6 of the slaveholding states and the certainty that others will speedily do likewise, Texas has no alternative but to remain in an isolated connection with the North or unite her destinies with the South." February 2nd, 1861. It's 2024. The Civil War began April 12th, 1861, and by its conclusion, April 9th, 1865, following the surrender of Robert E. Lee, 600,000 to 1 million lives were lost. What was achieved thereafter was the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, and I quote, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction," unquote. These 32 words came at a heavy price. The price was that great and terrible war. It's a price we're still paying today. The abolition of slavery came at the cost of blood, and freedom still costs, because these forces that seek to deprive you and me of our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or rewrite history, these forces that seek to deprive our students of their right to dream and to become what they want to be, to improve their standard of living, are alive, strong, and well in 2024. And so I ask that we all do 3 things: respecting the First Amendment and freedom of speech. 1, I ask that we acknowledge that we are all human beings, equally so. 2, I ask that we do not act as to deny other human beings their rights, which are self-evident. There's a scene in Lincoln last night I'm a physicist, and Lincoln was asking these engineers if they had studied Euclid, and they said, "I can't remember a thing." That was a long time ago. Well, Lincoln said, "Well, I'm not an engineer, I don't think that way," in the movie. But I did read Euclid, and in it he says that if 2 things are equal to a third thing, then those 2 things are equal to each other. He said that's self-evident. Euclid had to simply state that because it's so obvious. The rights of human beings are that self-evident. I ask, number 3, that we give each and every student our very best, 100%, all the time, equally to all students. Thank you.
So it took me a minute to come out because I really was digesting what Dr. Bowen shared. How important is it for us, no matter what we do on this campus, to give every single student our best every single time? It's the privilege of our work. It's what we're here to do. And I shook his hand, and I thank him for his well-considered comments. So now that I have my folder back and don't have to wing it, welcome to Welcome Back Day for Spring 2024. I really hope that all of you took time over the break to renew yourselves in mind, in body, and in spirit, because indeed we are all one text. You can't be fully present if your body is ill, but your mind is on point, because your mind is not on point when your body is ill, right? And if your mind and body are all right, but you're feeling down, you're still not on point. We are all one story. So I encourage us all the time, care for yourself, mind, body, and spirit. We have chosen to dedicate our lives to careers of service, and careers of service require much from us. It requires stores of energy that need to be boundless, but indeed are not. So please, I again encourage you, take care of yourself. Coming back from break, I, along with the rest of the Antelope Valley College mobile workforce, were so pleased to note that we get to return to work in our assigned spaces. So if there's anyone from facilities here, planning, any of the classified professionals who helped in the move, they are probably still moving, but know how grateful we are, and all of us, we thank you so much for your diligent work. I know that Dean Borman is happy to have his office back, and I think the residents of the Enterprise Lab, which was for a time known as Enterprise One while the president was on board. But now that I'm back in the administration building, we have decommissioned that space back to Enterprise Lab, and Dean Borman, you have the con. It seems the theme is coming through, right? One thing we can count on is change. Change in landscape as we build, change in workspaces as we move around, change in priorities as we respond to post-isolation realities, as if the universe were confirming this truth. When I unpacked and moved back into my office, I found this. Some of you maybe were here as students when this was published. It's the Antelope Valley College, spring 1972. This may be an antique by now by definitions. I could take it to the road show and see what it's worth, right? Spring 1972 student publication called the Spring Times. And as I looked at this, I was curious, what were they talking about in the spring of 1972? Can I share? Okay. First of all, the first article, brace yourselves, career education, the great debate. Does that sound familiar? Raise your hand if you've had a conversation about the value of career education, or should we just be transferring students to four-year institutions? But it's 2024. In this article, it said, from all indications, the public schooling system is showing definite signs of altering its present course of evolution. The alteration would take the form of a concept which is referred to many as career education, and it actually has the little finger quotes, career education. The proposal was submitted by U.S. Commissioner of Education Sidney Marland, who is serving under the Nixon administration. I'm not even going to ask those of you who weren't born yet to raise your hands, because I know it's a lot. The highly controversial plan would require all high school students to prepare for jobs. Oh my gosh, how dare we require people to prepare for jobs? Interesting that here we are in 2024 having the same conversations, but have we resolved anything? Have we found that perfect blend of understanding of how classic education supports people in the workplace and how the reality is that those of us with liberal arts degrees never said, no, I don't want to be gainfully employed? Right? We all want a career. We all want to be job ready. We all want skills. We all want those things. So there's this false dichotomy that somehow has entered our dialogue, either career education or a liberal arts degree. Is there no land in between? So I thought, maybe the rest of the magazine is actually rooted in conversations of the past. So let's see. The next one, this has a nice picture. It says, long hairs need not apply. How many of you started hearing the musical Hair in your head, right? Long hairs need not apply. The root of this article actually is not so much about people's hair length. It kind of is the jump off point into the conversation, but you'll enjoy the opening paragraph. Welcome to downtown Lancaster. As you look to your left, you will see our wonderful shopping area, and you look to your right and you can, look at those long hair hippie radicals. Mabel, just sitting there on the corner of the street doing absolutely nothing. Why can't they get a job or go do something? It seems that in our wonderful community, this question arises quite often. The long hair issue has been of great controversy in the past decade. To some people, long hair represents everything that is dirty, radical, drug-ridden, communist, and gay. 1972. That's quite a collection of labels that can signify. But in reality, raise your hand if you've been involved in a human rights conversation lately. I hope all of us have been to some degree or another. If the topic wasn't the length of someone's hair, what was the topic? What was at the root? That was a pun. Not enough coffee? No. What was at the root of the conversation, right? What was it? What were the discriminatory actions that spurned your conversation? Were they actions or behaviors based? Was the conversation based on surface identifiers? I see a person who wears baggy jeans, and so they must be fill in the blank. I see a person with tattoos and piercings, they must be fill in the blank. I see someone fill in the blank, they must be fill in the blank. If our conversations jump off from that point, at the end of the day, what we're having is a human rights conversation because we are making judgments on surface, and sometimes not so surface, identifiers. 1972, 2024, we're still having the same conversation. There's a couple of more. This one was called Good Night, You Moonlight Ladies. Just what is it that is causing those uneasy, explosive rumblings from American women? Why is it that American women are now more than ever before rejecting the traditional role of housewife and mother and demanding instead the right to careers and self-fulfillment? Wow, That sentence just pitted self-fulfillment against being a wife and mother. That's the paradigm of the conversation that was established. You can either be a wife and mother traditionally, or you can be a self-fulfilled career woman. Really? Exactly. Wow is right. Listen, it's very interesting. Why are women college students jeopardizing their social lives by joining the women's liberation movement and demanding to be accepted as human beings instead of sex objects? For starters, imagine how an intelligent young woman feels when she's confronted with the following facts recently revealed by Alan Pfeiffer, president of the Carnegie Corporation of New York. Women now, 1972, make up 37% of the entire labor force, but are concentrated in clerical and service work, and when at the professional or technical level are found principally in just a few traditionally female occupations such as teaching, social work, and nursing. Of all the doctorates earned in the United States between 1960 and 69, only 11.6% went to women, and in many fields, there were virtually no women at all gaining PhDs. Today, only 2% of American women are dentists, as compared with 70% in Denmark. In Britain, 16% of the women are physicians, as compared with 7% in the United States. Of the 50 largest academic libraries in the United States, 1972, not one is headed by a woman. Of the approximately 13,000 superintendents of school districts in the nation, exactly 2 are women. 2 out of 13,000, 1972. While those numbers have changed a bit, we still are having similar conversations. We talk about women in STEM. We talk about how do we increase our female students, particularly in STEM areas that are still notoriously male. And there is nothing that ties gender to academic subjects except culture and practices. It wasn't until President Obama signed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. Do you know what year that was? Do you know? Where's our political science teachers? 2000 and what? He was elected in 2008, and the first thing he did after being inaugurated was sign the Lilly Ledbetter Pay Act. Early 2009. 2009 was the first legislation that guaranteed by law that women would get equal pay for equal work. 2009 was when the law demanded equal pay for equal work. So, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? We're cycling back on similar conversations. The nuances might change a little bit. It might be a different verse, but it's the same tune. There's one more that I thought actually you might find enjoyable. There's a whole section here. This is actually one of the longer articles. Can you read the title from here? Marijuana, to smoke or not to smoke. It's interesting because back in 1972, they started the conversation about, should we legalize this? Should it be treated like alcohol? And of course, it wasn't until very recently, right? It was in 2016, Prop 64 legalized the use of marijuana for adults as a recreational drug. You didn't have to have that prescription anymore. Changed the class of it. But do you know that starting January 1 of this year, there was even more legislation passed? Certain job classes, there's basically 2 major exceptions. Construction is one, and government jobs where you have to have pass a background check is the other. But other people, your workplace can't use drug tests against you when you're using marijuana on your own time. What the culture shift is trying to help people understand is that it's now sort of like drinking alcohol. If your boss can't give you, like say, oh, you had a glass of wine last night, therefore you're getting disciplined at work. It's the same kind of concept. But 1972, 2024, all of these topics have something in common. They're about change. But if you notice, the same topics are governing our conversation today, maybe more or less nuanced as we have them, but the core remains. Resisting change is an exercise in futility, but shaping change is a healthy expense of energy. Even though it took from 1972 to 2009, that's 37 years, for the conversation about women in the workplace to evolve, it resulted in a more equitable working environment. 37 years, that's a lot of my working career. So for the bulk of my working career, and my female colleagues out in the audience, for the bulk of our working career, we may have enjoyed equal pay, but we weren't guaranteed it. When you stop and think about that, it's very sobering, actually. If time allowed, we could explore the sociological phenomenon around culture and collective resistance to change, or we could explore the psychological power of no as an automatic response to new ideas. It buys time to digest and analyze that new thing. Or we could explore the physics of cultural movements and the difficulties in overcoming collective inertia expressed as the desire to maintain and preserve the status quo. But all of those conversations would cost us the one thing that passes and never comes back. It would cost us the one thing that our students don't have. That's time. In 2024, we find ourselves in a nationwide culture that has fully embraced the unhelpful and false dichotomy of either you're with me or you're my enemy. Unfortunately, that unhelpful, false construct threatens to impeach other areas of our lives and interactions, and it will if we allow it. At AVC, if we give in to this unhelpful, false dichotomy, then we will entrench ourselves against each other by identifiers, just like in these articles. Student services or academic affairs, classified professionals or faculty, employees of all kinds or administrators, Hispanic or African American, minoritized groups or white, men or women, cisgendered or, but wait a minute. That defies a dichotomy, doesn't it? Even the old dichotomy of men and women doesn't include everyone who walks on this campus. So we can't truthfully converse in binaries when life is full of complexity. Now is the time for us to have serious conversations that result in action about what our students, who are 63% Hispanic, around 15% Black and African American, and around 14% white and Caucasian, need from us in order to succeed. And now is the time for us to face the reality that the way I went to college in 1984, I just confessed, looks nothing like what our students need from us in 2024. Pause for a minute. When did you go to college? How diverse was your college? How many people had a laptop? How many people had a tablet? How many people had a cell phone? A cell phone, which, by the way, has more computing power than what sent the people to the moon. Ponder that in fear. You hold more power in your hand right now than what sent men to the moon. Our students were born with this in their hands. What do they need from us in 2024? They don't have 50 years to wait for us to improve. The speed of change is only increasing, and if we exercise our right to defend the status quo over our privilege of service, we will not only lose precious time, but we will lose even more precious students. Our jobs are a privilege, and we owe it to our students and our community to ask ourselves and each other tough questions. Are we the best we can be? What does AVC need to change to become the institutions that our students deserve? What do you, each of us individually and collectively, need to change in order for our students to succeed? Our speakers today are going to share with us incredible information that impacts a significant portion of our student body, and I sincerely hope that we rise to the occasion to learn, improve, and act. Our students deserve for us to accept this challenge and do the brave thing and embrace the change that supports, nurtures, includes, welcomes, and educates our students. It is my privilege today to introduce to you Dr. Darla Cooper and Professor Michelle Velasquez-Bean. Dr. Darla Cooper is working with the RP group, and she has worked in the community college system for over 20 years, having previously held institutional research director positions at Santa Barbara City College, Oxnard College, and Ohlone College. She led the Student Support Redefined study, a landmark research project that examined what supports student success, and co-led the Through the Gate study, which examines what happens with students who appear ready to transfer but actually do not. Today, they're going to discuss with us the African American Transfer Tipping Point study. And we will look at those momentum points, and they're actually going to share with us some data about Antelope Valley College as it relates to the momentum points in those studies. We're going to learn about ourselves today. Professor Michelle Velasquez-Bean, she's a professor of English and has recently worked with the statewide academic senate as treasurer. Before I became president here, I was a vice president of instruction. I had the privilege of sitting on 5C with her, the statewide curriculum committee, and working. We shared space as the ethnic studies was being defined, and all of those conversations were happening. And so Michelle she certainly has my deep respect. She's a professor of English at Rio Hondo College, and she's been teaching for over 22 years, and she has experience in the community colleges and the K-12 systems. Her expertise focuses on anti-racist practices and equity-minded approaches to classroom instruction and academic support systems. Her passion is building innovative programs and leading professional development aimed at supporting people of color and allies. She's led numerous presentations on culturally responsive teaching and learning, and on model hiring principles and practices for faculty diversification. She's been chair of the ASCCC Equity and Diversity Action Committee, the Part-Time Faculty Committee, the Faculty Leadership Development Committee, and the Non-Credit Pre-Transfer and Continuing Education Committee. She's been Rio Hondo College Academic Senate President and currently leads Rio Raíces Latinx Affinity Group. She has a master's in English from CSU Fullerton with an emphasis in writing, language, and rhetoric, and a single subject credential in English from CSU Long Beach. Our speakers are more than qualified to speak to us about some very important topics today, and I am so pleased that they are here, and I would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Cooper and Professor Velasquez-Bean.
Good morning, AVC. Happy New Year. We're so happy to be here. Thank you, Dr. Sally.
So we have a tradition here in the Antelope Valley of challenge coins. And this coin is the Antelope Valley College coin, and on the back it says, "Serve students and be kind." And here are pins for Antelope Valley College that say, "Viviendo el sueño," for indeed, we are living the dream.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being
I feel like we
here.
need to do a selfie then. Right? Channeling the students
There you
here.
go.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Sally. Thank you for the warm welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Can I get this? I'm a little taller. It's a little taller. So I've asked, well, first of all, thank you for being here. Good morning. Let's see, it's almost 10. Are we good? Like, we're awake, we got our coffee, we're good to go? Okay. So I've asked my colleague, Michelle, to join me today because I'm going to share with you about some research that we've done here at the RP group. But I wanted to make sure that I could include a practitioner perspective on what I'm going to share with you, and then obviously a faculty perspective. So that's what we're hoping to do.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper. A mentor, an amazing, amazing human. And so I'm so grateful to have the invitation to be here with you. And when Dr. Zealot actually reads your bio and you hear it's actually 23 years of teaching, I was like, oh my goodness. When you start having students coming back with their children, and right, that is pretty powerful. And just a little bit about me. Passionate Latina, she read my bio. I'd like to share a little bit about this, that I have 3 amazing humans, my sons, and an amazing husband. And one, very close to your community here, works at Edwards Air Force Base. So I feel an affinity to you all by proxy through my son. So thank you for having us.
So I'm going to start us out with a lot of background and some of the research, and then you'll see us kind of going back and forth in terms of asking Michelle to kind of comment. There's a point where we're going to ask you to kind of, hopefully there's someone near you can talk to. We're just going to do just a few minutes of processing because we think it's important to kind of stop because I got a lot of information for you, so it's good to have some time to process a little bit. And then hopefully, if we have time, we'll have time for questions. If not, we can always hang out. We purposely didn't schedule something, so if you want to come up and talk to us, feel free to do that afterwards. But we're just really happy to be here and excited to share this information with you. So as mentioned, here to talk about a study that we did called the African American Transfer Tipping Point. In case you're not familiar with the RP group, the Research and Planning Group for California Community Colleges, the organization where I am the CEO, we are an independent nonprofit, but we work alongside California Community College System. As mentioned, I did work at 3 different colleges as an institutional researcher, and we do research, like what I'm going to share with you today, but we also do professional development. So if you've ever heard of or been to the Strengthening Student Success Conference, that is us. And then we got our start as the membership organization for the researchers and planners that work across the California Community College System. So that's who we are. Again, I'm going to give a very brief overview of the Through the Gate study, because that's the one that led to this one. So this is basically a spin-off study. Then I'm going to take you through the first 2 phases of the study, which is kind of the quantitative data and the surveys, and focus groups and interviews that we did, and then the third phase about the survey. But the information I have about AVC is that quantitative information, so stay tuned for that. So Through the Gate, this study basically was, we were kind of thinking there's a group of students that are completing all or most of their transfer requirements, but then they're not transferring. So why would anybody do that? Why would anyone spend all that time, that money, that energy, and then not go to the next level, go on to the transfer institution? So again, there's a whole presentation just on this study, of course, but what we found was that transfer is not a dichotomous variable, it's a continuum, and that students are making progress and achieving certain milestones along the way. And 2 really key milestones is what we characterized as at the gate or near the gate. And so at the gate are the students who, at least again on paper, they have at least 60 transferable units with a 2.0. They've completed their math and their English requirements, or they've earned an ADT. Everyone knows what an ADT is, the Associate Degree for Transfer. So if a student has done all of that, why wouldn't they go on to transfer? That was the question. The other category we were looking at is this idea of near the gate, and the only real difference between the 2 groups is the English and math. So the at the gate group has finished their English and math, and the near the gate group has not. They may have finished one or the other, or neither, but they've got the 60 units, but they haven't finished those requirements. So we wanted to try to look at what's going on with those groups, what's happening to those at the gate and near the gate students, and why are they not moving on to transfer. lots of findings from that study. If you feel free to find that on our website if you're really interested in more on that. But the really key finding that led to the current study is that when we looked at that group of students who had gotten to that 60-unit milestone, and then we disaggregated by race, what we found were that Black students were the most likely to transfer from that point. So there's obviously some kind of tipping point, right? Because I think we're all familiar with transfer rates. We've seen them disaggregated, and often our African American, our Black students have among the lowest transfer rates. But if they get to 60 units, they have the highest transfer rate. Something's going on basically between 0 and 60 that we needed to look at. And that's really why we did this study. So again, the study was generously funded by Lumina Foundation. We always want to give credit because we wouldn't have been able to do it without them. But these were our guiding questions for this study. Basically, what are those things that are, providing momentum or are taking momentum basically away from Black students and their pursuit and achievement of transfer? And then trying to dig a little bit deeper to figure out, are there certain programs or services on our campuses that are really making a difference in their success? So again, I mentioned there's 3 phases. The first phase was that quantitative data. So if people are familiar with MIS, we all know that every college in the state has to send data on its students up to the chancellor's office, and there's this big, massive amount of data that sits up there. So we were able to access that and look at Black students across the state and look at different variables and their outcomes and their relationships. So that was where we started. Then we got these findings and we said, okay, well, we need to figure out, like, what do these mean? Because some of them were a little head scratching. So we interviewed practitioners, counselors and administrators, instructional faculty who work with Black students in programs like EOPS and Umoja, and try to get their perspective. And then we did focus groups with Black students, again, trying to get their understanding, sharing their experiences to help us make sense of these findings. And then after all that, we did a survey statewide of Black students, again, to get more information. So again, the first 2 phases, what I'm going to go through, and then I'll talk about the survey. So again, we looked at 6 cohorts of incoming freshmen, followed each of them for 6 years, okay? And then we had to, obviously, as mentioned, our students have a lot of goals, so we wanted to try to focus in on the ones who seem to have transfer as a goal. So we used the behavior of having to have completed at least 12 transferable units in order to indicate transfer intent, because that's a whole other thing to get into, the issues with the ED goal. Some of you may know it intimately if you're working with students, but it's not always the most reliable information in terms of what a student's intent is in terms of their goal when they come to us. So we got almost 70,000 Black students in this total cohort, and then we wanted to be able to compare them to basically everyone else, just to get some kind of gauge. And so that was just not quite 800,000 in that group. So we put a lot of factors into the model. It's the regression model for any of your statistics people. But the ones in the box are the ones that had the most impact. The list is very long. Again, all of this information is on our website, but we looked at a lot of different factors. But these were the ones that had the biggest impact on whether a Black student transferred or not, okay? And then the ones that are not in the box are factors that had some influence, but not as big as the ones in the box. So I'm going to share with you the ones in the box. So what this basically says is that if a Black student completes their transfer and English requirements in their first year, they are 310% more likely to transfer. If you do not understand how big that number is, it is the factor of 4. They are 4 times more likely than a Black student who doesn't do that to transfer. With me? Okay. Now, the next one on here, math. If a black student completes their transfer level math in their first year, they are 160% more likely to transfer. That's more than doubling their chances, okay? If they just complete English and not math in their first year, 70%. Now the problem with the other numbers, once you get past the 300 and the 160, all the others are like, oh, that's small. They're not. They're not small. If I told you I could improve your chances of winning the lottery by 70%, would you take it? Okay, so I try to say that to give people some perspective, because the numbers look small because they're being dwarfed by those first two, but 70% is still significant. Any counselors in the house? Any counselors in the house? Hello, counselors. 60% more likely if a black student sees a counselor at any point to transfer. 60%. I'll take those odds. Emoja, any Emoja people? You have an Emoja program, I understand? All right. 20% more likely for your Emoja students than non-Emoja students. And again, these are statewide numbers. I'm going to give you your AVC numbers, and we're going to have to process. All right. Now you can see that the last three, the arrow is going in the other direction. And so that means these factors decrease a student's chances of transferring. Now I want to be very clear with those first two, low income and our students with disabilities. It is not anything inherent in these students. It is not the student, it is the circumstance. It is hard to go to school when you don't have resources. It is harder to go to school with a disability. Doesn't mean you're not going to do it, doesn't mean you can't do it, there's none of that. It just means they have more challenges than a student who does not have a disability. And that's the comparison. Remember, it's those who have it, those who do not. So again, those students who don't have resources, low income, to those students who do have resources, not low income. Okay, so I want to separate people from circumstance. The last one there, though, deserves some attention, because while the numbers can go to infinity going that way, they can only go up to 100 this way, because you can't be twice as likely not to do something, or 4 times, like, it just doesn't compute, right? Doesn't compute mathematically, and it doesn't make sense to us, right? So 70% is bad, because it's pretty darn close to 100. 100% means you have like 0 likelihood, right? So this means they only have a 30% chance of making it if a black student ever gets on probation. So probation is very damaging to a black student's chances of transfer success. 2 things I need to point out to you. The first one is I mentioned counseling, 60%, that's great. But when we looked at this for all other students, it's 110. So there's something that black students are not getting in terms of a benefit from counseling that all other students are getting. That it requires investigation. I do have a bit more information on that shortly, but something to ponder. That's almost double, 60 to 110. So there's something going on where our black students are not able to benefit at the same level from counseling as other students. And then the last one, again, the probation one, is compounded by the fact that black students are much more likely to get on probation than other students. So they're more likely to get on probation, and then when they do, their chances are only 30% of ever reaching their goal. Okay? You ready for AVC? Okay. So you see some differences there. AVC is the darker bar. So I will tell you more or less what these mean. Math is critical for black students at AVC. That's why you see the second bar is much further out. And if there's English faculty in here, I'm not saying English is not important. You can see it's still important. But if a black student can finish their transfer level math at AVC in the first year, over 200% more likely to transfer. Okay? So whatever you're doing for math, you got to get black students through math, and that will dramatically increase their chances. They need to do English too, but math is clearly the key. The other one there, unfortunately, Black students are at AVC, it's only 50% for the counseling. It's I think about 90 something for non-Blacks, for everyone else. Okay, so you still have the same effect, but counseling is not as impactful. Again, 50, 60% is not a huge difference, but it's still a difference. But you still have the same pattern, is my point, that you see statewide in terms of Black students are not benefiting at the same level from counseling as all other students. Emoja. Your Black students in Emoja transfer. Yes, thank you. And by the way, it's 10 times higher than what you see statewide. And again, this is a comparison of Black students in Emoja to Black students not in Emoja. So Black students in Emoja at AVC are 200% more likely to transfer. 200. See, these are the kind of results you go back and you go, what? I must have messed up, right? You're going like, I did something with my formula, something in my programming. Let me check the data. Let me do that. I got to take a little side note, because a long time ago, I worked on a project for AVC. I was here a lot, at least it felt that way. And I was doing, forgive my memory, I don't remember the exact program, but I believe it was like a Title V grant, and it was helping Black students, and it was focused on English and getting them through their English. And I was running the numbers, and we were looking at, Black students who finished their, English, transfer level English, and what were their graduation rates. And I did the calculation, and their graduation rates were like through the roof. They were higher than everybody else's, and I went, oh, I messed up. Because I'm programmed, just like everyone else, to expect to see Black students at the bottom of every success outcome, right? Because everything we see, they're always at the bottom. So if they're at the top, it must be me. I must have done the research wrong. There's a catch in my formula. So I checked everything. I ran it again. Same result. Oh, okay, well, let me check this again. So I'm checking. I spent a bunch of time checking. And then I was like, I can't find my mistake. So I started to look at transcripts. I started to look at like literally individual students' records to see like, is there something in the data that's wrong? And finally, I couldn't find it. And I said, this must be right. So there was something I learned, and I thank you all, because from that experience, I realized that if Black students can get to a certain point, if they can get past certain milestones, they become the most likely to succeed. The problem is not enough of them get to those milestones. That's where we have to focus our efforts, is getting our Black students to these and through these milestones. And I'm not saying like, oh, once they get past them, go, okay, good luck. They still need your support. They still need all of those things. But it clears these barriers, and they are able to get through. And they're on par with their counterparts. So thank you to AVC for teaching me that lesson all those years ago through that project, because when we found that through the gate, finding where Black students were the most likely to transfer if they get to 60 units, I didn't question it, because I had seen it before, right here at AVC.
Yeah, definitely give yourself a hand. That was a lot. I don't know about you all, but I feel all kinds of feels right now. So your heart racing, your shoulders up, whatever that is. Let's think about on the next slide. There's a question here for y'all. So we're gonna go to what are the implications on the impacts, and talk to each other about it. So in a second, wait for directions. In a second, I'm gonna give you a minute. You're gonna turn to someone either next to you or behind you, because I can see some of you are in single rows. Find a partner and just process this out, because guess what? We're human beings, and feeling the feels is human. So let's talk this out. What are the implications, what are the impacts for looking at that AVC data that Dr. Cooper just showed? 1 minute, the person wearing the brightest outfit today goes first. Go. Turn around, partner up. I'll help you all out too. Everybody good? Yep, good. 1 minute. You could be a group of threes. How about that? 30 seconds, other partner, reflect. Ten seconds, 10 seconds. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fist bump the person or elbow bump the person, say thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, I love it. All right, as you all come back, I know it was a quick minute. We need time, because we're humans, to process. It's very difficult to think of something. Dr. Cooper gave you all that logic, all of that data. But we also are human beings with a heart and a soul, and doing work to really have positive impact for our students is hard work as well. So that's the idea, and we're going to talk more as we get into some of the results and some of the impacts and some of the recommendations. We're going to talk in the next hour about what can be some of those tangibles. You just did one right now. You processed out with each other because you're whole human beings. My heart was racing, maybe yours was. My shoulders were up after seeing that data. And then also, too, there was some joy, right? Seeing and hearing about our amazing AVC. I feel like I'm part of you all now. Our amazing AVC emotion, and seeing some of the impacts that even Dr. Cooper had discussed early on. All of those things, we can hold both. We can be, like Dr. Zealot said this morning, thinking the time is now and about the past and the harms of the past, and be all kinds of feels over that, and still hold that we are doing great as AVC. We can do better. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Cooper so she could talk a little bit about what else this revealed in the second phase.
That was just phase 1, y'all. So phase 2, I told you that we asked, again, practitioners and students. So we took those findings to them, and they said, help us make sense out of these. Why are we seeing these results, right? And so when we had talked to the students about the math and the English findings, you know what came up? Faculty. Faculty are key. The faculty are key. You are making or breaking a student's chances of success. So you play a critical role in student success, not just the success of them in your class, but their success after your class, their ability to finish their goal. We talk about English and math as gatekeeper courses. I know a lot of people are changing it to gateway courses because the keeper, right, keeps people out. I don't like to think of the gatekeeper as just keeping people out. The gatekeeper can let people in. You are keeping the gate. You can open it, you can close it. Please open it. Please open it for your students. Think about their success beyond your class, and that your class sets them up for that one way or another. You're part of the solution or you're part of the problem. We asked the students about counseling. We specifically asked them about, why are we seeing this difference between Black students and everybody else? What could be the reason why Black students are not benefiting from counseling at the same level as other students? A couple things came up. They said, well, when I go into those spaces, those counseling offices, those transfer centers, I don't feel welcome. I don't see myself in there. I don't see myself represented. And what that means is, obviously, first, they don't see any counselors who look like them in a lot of our colleges, or there's only one. right? Or they don't see anything representing their culture in these spaces, right? They don't feel welcome. They don't see themselves in these spaces. And so they walk in. I actually did the focus group so I can still hear and see them in my mind's eye. They walk into these places, they look around and go, nope, and walk out. Or someone that greets them at the door makes them feel unwelcome, they leave. So that was number one. The other reason that they talked about is a lot of our students, all students, but a lot of our Black students are coming with trauma. Personal trauma, emotional trauma, educational trauma. They also have a lot current trauma, past trauma. And they're coming to this counseling space and they have to see a different counselor every single time, which means they're supposed to tell their whole story every single time. And I don't know about you, but I'm like, I don't know you. I'm not telling you all my business. I don't trust you. And I don't trust you not to judge me if I have family who are incarcerated, if we're foster youth, if whatever it is, fill in the blank. So I'm not going to tell you the whole story. But the problem is when our students don't tell us the whole story, we can't always give them the best counseling, the best advice. We need to understand, well, what's going on in your life right now? What are you juggling? What are you trying to balance? Because depending on that answer, I might give you different advice, right? Because of what's going on in your life. But if I don't know what's going on in your life, then I'm just going to tell you what I tell everybody else. And that may not work for you. So it's this idea of trust. And when we talked the next one about Emoja, counseling came up when we talked to students, because we talked to several students who were in Emoja programs. Counseling came up as key because there they had a dedicated counselor who knew them, knew their name, knew their story, knew their history, knew their goals, their dreams, their trauma. And they didn't have to rehash this every single time they went in to try to figure out their semester courses, right? The other thing they talked about is that in Emoja, those people asked about more than just school. Because they knew something about me. They could ask about my mama, could ask about my job, could ask about whatever, somebody was sick. They could ask about those things because they knew me. We have to move away from transactions to relationships. We have to do this for Black student success. They need relationships. They need people to care about them. They need people to care about their success and act like it. Okay? And then the last one, the probation, that was very traumatizing to people. Our students are traumatized by probation. It starts with the name. Y'all still call it probation? It's got to go. It's got to change. You need to start, well, today is Friday, start Monday. If you can't start today, you need to change the name. It's a movement, it's happening. Some colleges, if you haven't seen it yet, Moore Park College is out front. There are several other colleges. You can do it even without the Title V changes, although we're working on that too. But you can change the name, what you call it here. But don't stop there, because it's not just about the name, it's about how we treat students. What does your letter say? What do your communications say to your students on probation? Because most of them are this. You've been bad. You have to prove to us that you belong to stay. You deserve to stay here. You've got to now jump through all these hoops. Oh, but I'm going to take your financial aid away. I'm going to take away your priority registration. So you've shown me that you're struggling, but I'm going to make it harder. Who came up with this? This is a problem that needs to be solved, and it can start today at AVC. Thank you. Students talked about how that letter made them feel, how the process made them feel. What was somewhat hilarious, not in a funny way, but in that other kind of bad, hilarious way, is the students talked about how demoralizing probation was. When we talked to the practitioners about it, they saw it's a fail-safe. It's a safety net. It's an intervention. It's a way to help students so they don't dig a deeper hole and all of that. And so, the heart is in the right place, but if you look at your processes, you look at your communications, they don't match that thinking. They are very punitive. And we also need to talk, we don't have time, but we need to talk about SAP, status for academic progress, because that is a big problem. And it's causing a lot of students, or keeping a lot of students from finishing their goals. Again, another lecture and all that. Probation has to change. So we have these recommendations after this first phase, and I said there starts with leadership. If your leadership is not focused on Black student success, and it's not to the exclusion of others, it's included, but understanding that Black students are having a harder time than others, a lot of other groups, making sure that whatever you're doing serves those students, because you serve those students, you serve all students, right? You serve and you do things that we know work for Black students, they will work for other students. Trust me, there's data on this. You need to make sure that you're partnering with your local universities. You need to have those streamlined, have warm handoffs, it's not just articulating classes, but maybe articulating programs, so that there is, like, you're in this program at EOPS, well, how do they transition to whatever is at the university? Right? Wherever most of your students are going. Looking for those opportunities to partner with your universities. Already talked a lot about counseling. It's key, got to be relational, not transactional. Talked already about probation, need to be totally reimagined, re-envisioned. But instructional faculty, again, gatekeeper, doesn't have to mean keeping people out. It can be letting people in. So Michelle's going to talk a little bit about from that practitioner perspective.
Well, Dr. Cooper, I really don't have a lot of time. I got to get through this COR. There's a lot of content. Y'all, that's what I used to say. Why was I saying I don't have time to care for my students? Because that's what I was taught. I just got to get through all this. They're going to be fine. I don't want to tell my personal life. I don't want to know their stories. Y'all, I was a Puente teacher. I know the gasp. And then Puente, Umoja, I was a K-12 instructor before I was tenured at a community college. Learning from my colleagues and seeing how they care and doing the actual culturally sustaining practices, when you do that, like Dr. Cooper says, you start building those relationships first. Guess what? I'm sure neuroscience, you can check me on this, you can read Zaretta Hammond, who does work on this, and other practitioners. You prime the brain for the cognitive load that they're going to encounter in your classes, in your courses, in your workshops, in your theater, at your counter, in your tutoring center. So building the relationship doesn't necessarily mean that you have to forget all the stuff in the COR. What I say is you go slow to go fast. In other words, when you build that trust, like Dr. Cooper is talking about, with those relationships with your students, and that can look like what you just did with each other. You processed it with each other in pairs. You can put them into what Umoja calls villages, what Puente calls familias. These are practices that have worked. But let's be real, y'all. Don't be like me, like, I don't got time for that. I mean, I know you don't do that, but that was me. How dare I? How dare I? And so learning to say, wait a minute, let me not judge myself there's an element of judge, be real, but let me say, wow, I did that, and what can I do to be better and do better for the students? And so creating that kind of situation, be real about it. For decades, we've been doing diversity work. And yes, we can hold both. We are doing great things. I just talked to Dr. Jill earlier, where I don't know where you're at, Dr. Jill Zimmerman. Yes, amazing things that you're doing to wrap around the students. Intrusive, proactive counseling. She was so excited to tell me, and I was like high-fiving her. I was like, this is awesome. Having the partnerships, also having partnerships with your high schools coming in, with your transfer institutions. Those things, AVC doing well, what can we do to do better? So here's the big thing. So the question is a question behind me, yes. How do we take these recommendations? What do we do? Just better support our African American Black students, our Latinx students, our students of marginalized communities. You invest in curiosity and wonder. Curiosity and wonder means that you will constantly do what I did, like, wait a minute, why was I thinking I don't have time for this? Why was I relegating that to an afterthought instead of building the relationship to prime my students to go slow, to get to that content? And guess what? They will want to do it for you because they are learning. You continue to keep that element of rigor by building the relationship first, being relational, like Dr. Cooper talked about. So when we think about what are all these recommendations, I want us to center ourselves to be thinking about, and I'm sorry, I don't want to get in front of the screen. I want us to continue to think about that curiosity and wonder for true liberation. Constantly be reflecting on our practices and what we can do to do better. Dr. Cooper, I think you have the next slide.
It's a lot, right? It's a lot, right? There's more. Remember there's a phase 3? Hold on. So this was our statewide survey. We got over 7,000 Black students to respond to this survey across the state. Trust me, that's significant, in case you don't know. Just trust me on that. Most of them were currently enrolled, but we did have some students who had recently transferred or who had just stopped going to school. Some had just exited. They weren't at the community college, they weren't at a university, they were not attending any school. We had 51 students from AVC complete the survey. Yay! Thank you, appreciate that. So it says, again, this is just kind of, I'm not going to go through all this, so you can read some of these. This is basically the profile of the group that took the surveys. You'll see that it says 121 because we did have some continuing ed students fill it out at some of our continuing ed colleges. You also see that it's predominantly female. I think I still need to look this up. Women are more likely to take surveys. I don't know why. I don't know what that is. Somebody's probably done a study on it. I need to look it up. But we see this very consistently across any survey that we ever do, that it's very rarely matches it's about 55-45 in the state, 52-48, somewhere usually in that range. So 64 is high, but that is what we have. And you can see, we had a high number of Umoja students, and part of that was because we asked the Umoja programs across the state to give the survey to their students, so it stands to reason that we would have a higher proportion of them in the study. But again, you can see lots of other characteristics, and most of the other ones are aligned with what you would see statewide, except for the exceptions I just noted. So in this survey, we explored a few different constructs. I'm just going to very briefly, tell you about what we were looking at. So the first one, some of you may be familiar with this. I may have actually, I think, come here a long time ago and presented about this, but the 6 success factors. And so we had some questions on the survey that asked students about the 6 success factors, and we looked at some of the interactions with those. We also, this is from Through the Gate, where we came up with the transfer capacity building framework, and there are 4 factors there in terms of what helps or hinders any student's chances of transferring. University affordability is very simply students understanding whether they will be able to afford the university after they transfer, because obviously it costs a lot more, it's different, you might have to move, there's a lot to it, right? So they're just not sure about that. Support network, that is having people in your life, either at home, at school, wherever in your community, that support your efforts to achieve educational success. So that could be anyone from the cheerleader, who just says, you can do it, yeah, to that person who sits down and helps you with your essay, right? And everything in between. So it's, again, all different kinds of people. We all need all different kinds of support to get through that. School-life balance, I think we're all doing it. Maybe it's work-life balance for some of us. Some of it's school, work, and life balance. But our students, we know our students have complex lives, and the question is whether we are making it harder or easier for them to do that, to make that balance. And then the last one, pathway navigation, is just that simple. Are you able to navigate clearly to your goal? Do you know which classes to take, when to take them, how to take them, what steps you have to do, and in the right sequence and at the right time? So those are the factors that we found were the key to whether a student was likely to transfer or not in that through the gate study. We also looked at microaggressions and what impact they may be having on Black students' success. And we didn't just ask them, have you ever experienced a microaggression? We asked some fairly pointed questions, and we asked about different kinds of microaggressions, because that's key too. So just very quickly, the first one about intelligence is just basically making assumptions about a person's intelligence based on their race, based on their appearance, right? We all know stereotypes. The next one is making assumptions that someone is a criminal based on their appearance, okay? The next one is that, you know, you're a second-class citizen. You're not as good as, you don't deserve the same as. That's second-class citizen. And then the last one is the broad brush, that those statements that say, well, those people don't value education. That's where you're kind of, are those people are criminals? Are those people, right? That's what the last one is. So we were asking them about all of these different kind of microaggressions and if they had experienced them on their campuses. So again, this first phase, this survey was very long. It had a lot of questions. Don't worry, I'm not going to share all of it with you. We only have so much time. But we decided to start with those 4 factors that I shared with you from phase 1 that were critical to a Black student's transfer success: passing transfer level English, academic counseling, emoja, and probation, okay? So here's what we found. Okay, I always have to stop here and make it very clear with some caveats. We did ask students about whether they were experiencing microaggressions on their community college campus. However, we did not ask them where they were experiencing them, so we don't know if it's in the classroom, you know, in the cafeteria, just on campus, anywhere, we don't know where. We also did not ask them who was the aggressor. Was it a faculty member, a staff member, other students, etc.? So just keep that in mind before I show you the next slide. Okay. So the next slide, the next slide looks at the interaction between the frequency with which a Black student experiences microaggressions on the campus. That is specific. It's not just in life, but we did ask specifically at the college. And their success, how likely they are to be successful in completing transfer level English and transfer level math. So what is that interaction between microaggressions and the most influential factor to their success? So what you see on the left is English. And there's not quite a pattern, because the darker the bar, the more frequent the student is experiencing it. The darkest bar is the student says, I regularly experience microaggressions on campus. But you can see it's not quite a clear pattern with the English. So we're not quite sure yet what to make of that, other than there may not be a relationship here. There's a clear pattern on the right with math. The more frequently a Black student experiences microaggression, the less likely they are to finish or complete their transfer level math course in the first attempt. Again, to repeat, don't know if the microaggressions are happening in the math classroom. Not saying that. But it almost doesn't matter on some level, because they're experiencing them somewhere on that campus, and it's affecting their ability to pass math. Now, I've talked to a lot of people about this finding and said, what do you think? Why are we seeing this difference? The ideas that people have shared is English might lend itself more to culturally relevant pedagogy. You can write about yourself, about your background, your history, your culture. That doesn't often come through in math, where you are seeing yourself in the curriculum. The other thing that's come up is math is hard. for a lot of people, regardless of race. And so if you're in an environment where you're being microaggressed on the regular, you're just making what's already hard harder. You're just making it hard for me to be successful in something I'm already challenged doing. Okay? I do also want to point out what kind of gets lost in all of this. The lightest bar are the students who say they never experience microaggressions. If a black student never experiences microaggressions, their transfer level math pass rate is 80%. I don't know what your pass rate is here for transfer level math. I'm guessing it's not 80. Most schools, it's not close to 80. Math it's hard for a lot of people. Something going on here, where if black students, again, there's a thread here. If black students are able to have these barriers removed, they can be as successful, if not more successful, than anyone else. So we have to focus on removing these barriers. And a barrier is microaggressions and not feeling welcome, not feeling that you belong, not feeling that you are wanted, and that anybody cares about you and your success. So some people asked me to put this in. This is a quote from actually a different study, but it was from a black student, again, a focus group that I did, to just illustrate what some of our students are dealing with. And it doesn't matter if one faculty did this or 10 faculty, but there's a student who experienced this, and it's shameful. And the message has to be made clear that this is not acceptable anywhere from anyone. And it troubles me that there was a faculty member on any campus who felt that it was okay to say this and that it was funny. That I can't see you, dark people in the dark. That's not funny. Some people would actually argue that's a macroaggression. But the point is, this is happening. This is recent. This is not from 10 years ago, 5 years ago. This is from last year, a focus group that I did. And when I was doing this focus group and this student shared this with us, I had to pause. I had to deal with it. We all had to deal with it in that space. It was so hurtful. And I just felt for that student who had to sit there and how uncomfortable and damaging that is, and not know and not be able to do anything. And I thought about the other students who are hearing this and the ones who are split between the ones who are going, that's not okay, but what am I supposed to do? And the ones going, ha, 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 that's funny. It's not okay. It's not okay.
A lot. Dr. Cooper asked me, when we were preparing for y'all, what do you find surprising about this? And you know what? Without missing a beat, I said, nothing. Racial battle fatigue is real. Regardless of the intention, the harm is there for everyone. So believing our students, believing each other, when we say something is not right, my body is feeling it. So you could look up, Dr. Smith does, he's actually the person that coined racial battle fatigue. Our bodies actually carry that trauma. So Dr. Cooper was talking about the trauma. And it's not just, trauma with a capital T, the trauma that we live with from the day that we were born as Black and brown and marginalized communities. It's out there. So believing our students, believing each other when these things don't feel right and we say something, or even if we don't say something and you're in the room, even if it's uncomfortable for you. I'm gonna say that again, because you heard my stories before. We all have bias, it happens. And I have times where I've needed to do better and be better. You know what I used to say? I know this is being recorded, people, I hope, use it against me. We all evolve, this is the thing. I used to say to my students, you didn't come to my class, right, English, right? You didn't come to my class with paper and pen. Show up like a student. Have paper and pen. How dare I? How dare I make them feel that way? So there are things that we say and we don't even, I know for me, we don't even realize the impact. Even though my intention was not to harm them, it was like, oh, I'm gonna teach them to be responsible. Rio Hondo, I don't know if my school is on a hill. They literally have to take a couple of buses and walk up a hill to get to class while having 2, 3 jobs to feed their families. And I'm saying they're not responsible? How about we leverage and use the beauty of their whole humanity and their lived experiences, and we say, you know what, you are amazing. Let me teach you some help seeking behavior. Let's see, you don't have a pen? Okay, I have an actual one. In fact, right now in my bag behind this curtain, I have a whole thing of pens because a colleague called me out on that. In love. Michelle, why don't you go to all those conferences. I vividly remember this. She's like, you go to all those conferences and they give you free pens. The hotel has free pens. I take a few and I always have like a whole rubber band of pens. So who is changing there? Me. So it's about, remember we started at the beginning, it's about curiosity and wonder. Asking yourself, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Really, who needs to change? Again, there's some element of judgment, but to forgive ourselves, to be like, dang, that was not cool. And what can I do to be better? So 2 things I want to talk about. When we talk about microaggressions, if you want to learn a little bit more, PBS has a pretty good series of videos with some students actually talking about the additional microaggressions that they feel in the classroom spaces. So fight the urge to do what I did and to start to make excuses, right? Fight that urge, but give yourself the time and the space to feel the feel, because you're gonna feel that, and then start your culture humility journey. So it's about really looking inward. We can't change you. This data can't change you. Only you can change you. And I know, raise your hand in here, I've done this before, raise your hand in here if you want students to fail. Oh, phew, Dr. Zeller. I know she's in the room, but I know that you all believe this, right? No one gets into being an educator, whether you're at a counter or a center, on a field, or in a classroom, or in a workshop, or in a theater, wherever you're at. No one becomes an educator because you want people to fail. I earnestly believe about you all, that it should be about love, and at the beginning of everything should be that foundation. And so thinking about your own growth, I mean, here we are at the top of a new year. Is it about goals and resolutions, or maybe it's about growth? Thinking about, I heard this from the call map. Do you all know about the call map? We can, if you're unions, I think we'll give it to you for free. Ask me later about that. But it's a great app. Center ourselves, ground ourselves, has some really great meditations and some helpful little mini podcasts. And I heard the speaker saying, at the beginning of the year, we talk about these resolutions, we talk about, setting goals, and he says, I invite you to think about it a little differently. So if we have archery and there's a goal, right, and you're trying to hit the bullseye, think about what you need to do in the moment and even before that moment so that you can hit that bullseye. So what do we do often as faculty, as educators? We often think about, I need to get to that goal. I need to get all this stuff on the COR. I need to make the student learning outcome, like all these things, right? It's the bullseye. If you're like me, I tried archery right after the Hunger Games, craze. I'm like, I gotta do this, woman power, right? Oh my gosh, it's really hard. So if I just get anywhere on the board, I'm cool, right? Let alone hit the bullseye. But think about in the moment as you're pulling that back, you have to be present. You have to be strong, and you have to be focused. So maybe the goal with the curiosity and the wonder is to be present in the moment, feel the feel, allow yourself the moment, but then say, okay, I need the strength to be able to get better so I can at least get on that board as I'm earnestly looking to hit that target, that bullseye. So it's that focus, that presence, and that strength, that all the process that happens before you pull that bow back. That's what I invite you to think about today. And this means, y'all, no shame and no blame. So again, looking at ourselves with that curiosity and wonder, looking at our practices with that curiosity and wonder, but no shame or blame. That's not a place of love. Instead, flip it, reframe it. What about microaffirmations in our classrooms? I was speaking to Dr. Bowen earlier, and he talked about AVC. Where's Dr. Bowen? Is he in here? AVC being a place of care that's like a home for your students. So how do we replicate that in every space at AVC? Smiles. I mean, he came in, introduced himself. I'm sorry to put you on blast. I hope that's okay. Do I have your permission? Okay, thanks. Came in, introduced himself. I felt loved and cared for, even by that micro affirmation of a smile and a hello and an acknowledgement. That's how we show care in our classrooms. Those little things matter as well, so that our students feel safe. And it's not just our classrooms. I keep talking about everywhere, every space, right? But again, to remember that our actions, our words, our body language, there are impacts. So regardless of our intention, I had good intention. I wanted them to show up with paper and pen so they could take my writing class. But the harm was still there. So acknowledging that is going to then be acknowledging how we can address the microaggressions. It's not to put shame and blame, but it's to say, okay, with that curiosity and wonder, what can we do to be better? Dr. Cooper, I think you're going to talk about phase 3, right? Oh, sorry, my bad. Additional information for phase 3.
There's 3 more. Counseling. So we asked Black students if they want to see a Black counselor, and 2/3 of them said yes. But only half were able to. Okay, depends on where they are, depends on how many there are. We also found a connection between those who transferred successfully and those who didn't, and whether they were able to see a Black counselor. The ones who transferred were more likely to have seen a Black counselor. Okay, just associations, not guaranteed. Doesn't mean every Black student who sees a Black counselor transfers, but of the ones who did transfer, they had seen a Black counselor. Remember I mentioned about the 6 success factors. Well, so we looked at the interaction between how often a student saw a counselor and whether they said that they experienced these factors. And what you see there with the orange bars, the highest bars, those are the students who saw a counselor at least 3 times. Not a semester, just period. So there is a dosage, right? There's an intensity factor here. The more often you see a counselor, the more likely you are to experience these success factors. We've also seen that connection with transferring, okay? So counseling matters. What I may not have shared earlier is in my former life, I was a counselor. I did this job for 10 years. I know what it is to have the student in front of me. And I actually counseled students, I started off by counseling students on probation. So that's a very soft place in my heart. If I didn't tell this part earlier, but this study became very personal. It was already personal, just by the subject matter, but it became even more personal with the findings. And by the way, I didn't have anything to do with the data analysis. I didn't touch it. But when I saw these results, it just hit so close to home because, again, counselor, academic probation. I'm also the president of the Moja board at this time. Very personal. Sorry, I don't have a real direct connection to transfer level English and math other than I like math. But I'm one of those people who loves math. But anyway. So, Michelle, counseling, what you got to say?
I got stuff to say. Thank you. Yes, hire more Black counselors. Hire more people of color. Yes. Also, think about taxation. Dr. Cooper talks about this, right? It's not just your Black counselor's responsibility to support Black students. It's all our responsibility. So when you hire more, think about this. I like to use this analogy. I heard this somewhere. When you all, I imagine at some point, most of us had a yearbook, like in junior high or high school. What do you do when you get that yearbook? What's the first thing that you do when you get that yearbook? Anyone shout it out? You get people to sign it. What else? You look for yourself, right? You look for yourself. Like, ooh, some people had some, yearbooks with index, and you look like, oh, where's my name? What page am I on, right? That's the first thing I usually did, was look for myself. So think about that with our students. Think about that with each other. Think about how much you all have multiple degrees. How many times did you have a Black faculty member, a Black counselor in all of your years? You don't have to say it out loud, but just reflect on that. Remember, this is about curiosity and wonder. And why is that? So yes, hire more. And just also remember that people of color, marginalized communities, humans, we heal in community. So coming together in love in a community is important. And so when you have the affinity with an group by your ethnic background, by your diverse backgrounds, often it feels safer and is safer because we don't have to do all of the explaining. We can just be. And so having people that look like us matters. One thing though I wanna, that I constantly caution myself about is comparing my stories. Because no one ethnic background is a monolith, right? So we're all, even I'm Latina, and my good friend, Dr. Luke Laura from Ecuador, he's very different in his Latino identity. So we all have different elements to our own cultures, our own subcultures, our own family cultures. So I have to be careful to avoid comparing my stories to my students. I know that I feel all kind of ways when I would encounter colleagues. We go up and down the state, talking and doing professional development for faculty throughout the state when you're at statewide senate. And so I know that it feels kind of, I get in the feels when there are people that come in, and it's not to negate their story, but it doesn't feel good in any situation to compare. It can feel very unhealthy when they compare and say, well, I know, I grew up on a budget. And I'd say, well, I was a teen mom when I was, and mind you, I acknowledge my privilege. I'm standing up here in a place of privilege as a professor, right? But I was a teen mom where I had to actually make a choice between buying the book and buying the diapers. Can you imagine that choice? That's not a budget, that's trauma. And so I don't ever want to compare my lifestyle, but what I will do, and this is what I invite you all to do, is to share your story. So there is a difference there. When we are sharing our stories and we are creating the conditions in our classroom and our learning spaces to share our stories in a safe space, it then translates to our students in the learning environment we're creating, again, whether that be on the field, the counter, the workshop, the theater, wherever. It then creates a space for people to be brave, not just safe, but brave enough to share their story. That's where we want to get to, a space. Now, looking at cultural humility, that work that we talk about with that curiosity and wonder that's on ourselves, there are resources out there, tons of resources. One of the ones that we worked on with the statewide senate is the Cultural Humility Toolkit. So I invite you to check that toolkit out. It happens to be where you can work on institutional cultural humility at the same time as personal cultural humility. So check those elements out. Also the Student Senate. The Student Senate has a model policy that they created so that you can actually put something into place, policies that you can start with to address microaggressions, to address ensuring that you have a diverse faculty and a diverse hiring. There's also elements that you can do for your syllabus. So you all, there's tons of resource out there to look at how are you interrogating with that curiosity and wonder what you put in the very beginning, that first thing that the students see, that's syllabus. So I have one that's called My Commitment to You. And I built that on Dr. Emily Mitchell. She's up at American River College and is the head of the LGBTQ group of the state. They started a My Commitment to You paragraph that I just grabbed and used on the syllabus. So these are all like tangible, takeaways. So remembering why you became an educator, remembering that yes, it does matter to see representation, and remembering that it's about curiosity and wonder. What are we going to do so that we can ensure their success for our students? Dr. Cooper?
I just want to repeat something that you said, and I usually say in these presentations, because I want to make sure you hear it. Because she said it, but I want to repeat it. Black students are not the sole responsibility of Black faculty and staff. You hear me? They are everyone's responsibility. You don't have to be Black to help a Black student succeed. They need relationships. They need people who care about them and their success. That's what they need. And I don't think you have to be Black to do that. Okay? Okay. Umoja. Yay, Umoja. So we looked at several things related to Umoja in terms of counseling. Umoja students, again, it's one of the requirements, so they're more likely to have seen a counselor more often. They are more likely to have seen a Black counselor than Black students who are not in Umoja, but they were also more likely to say that they had community. They felt community, they felt a part of something. And again, there's a ton of research around belonging and the impact on student success. So community is key. They were also more likely than students who weren't in Umoja to be experiencing those 6 success factors. At RP, we did a whole study on Umoja statewide, and Umoja matters. Umoja makes a difference in students' lives, both professionally, in terms of their academics and going on, but also personally because of things like this. So, Umoja.
Thank you for this question. Dr. Cooper said, how do you can see the question up here, how do we Umojify all of our practice? And we talked about this earlier, that Puente, Umoja, EOPS, there are practices that we have done and done well for decades. So how do we then replicate those in every single one of our learning spaces? So one of the things that I talk about is culturally sustaining pedagogy. And underneath culturally sustaining pedagogy, you have culturally responsive pedagogy, you have trauma-informed pedagogy, you have social justice pedagogy, you have multicultural pedagogy. So one of the things often that we think about with multicultural pedagogy is the representation. So remember we talked about what do you do first? You look for, in a yearbook, you look for your picture, right? So one of the things people think about is, oh, we want to have representation in our textbooks, our curriculum, our clip art, things like that. Yes, great. That's multicultural pedagogy. What I am encouraging and inviting you all to do is to look at culturally responsive pedagogy, which again, I keep saying it's about building those relationships in the community, keeping that rigor, building those relationships in collaborative environments. Instead of moving, I would encourage us to move away from focusing on individualism that's very competitive in the classroom. And we do this well, we're educators, we're highly educated, right? It's very competitive that way as an individual. Instead, building the situations in the collaborative, collective environment so that, again, we prime that brain for the cognitive load that it requires whatever we're gonna be teaching. So if you think about it, there's a metaphor that I heard, and I thought this is a pretty good metaphor. If you picture the brain as a field of overgrown grass, the more times you walk a path, that same path in the overgrown grass, the clearer the path becomes. So when you think about culturally responsive pedagogy, teaching and learning in our classrooms, in our learning spaces, the lessons, the activities, and the environment that we're creating, and we keep doing them over and over again, you are then priming that brain. You're creating those collective environments that help support and scaffold the learning for our students. This is what Umoja and Puente does. So you, regardless of your discipline or area on campus, can do this. The same pathway, walking, imagine your learning space, your tutoring center, your counter, whatever it is. Imagine that you're gonna over and over again give them the same path clearly. It should never be the ha ha ha. I mean, think about it. Do you all make an exam? Do you all make a process, put up a flyer, whatever you do you all like think back, how am I gonna get the students to fail and be miserable and confused? You don't do that. You don't do that. So now just over and over again, a clear path, and then it will be easier and feel more supportive for the students. That's culturally relevant pedagogy. So yes, representation matters, and please, by all means, don't get me wrong. I'm saying there is Black and brown and marginalized communities. The scholarship is important to ensure that you have that in your curriculum. That's important. There's Black and brown excellence everywhere, and should be in every discipline, no matter what. But I'm also saying to think about how you're creating the learning environment in your spaces. So, last question. Remember, it's about curiosity and wonder. Think about how you learned your first language. Did someone hand you a textbook? No. You talked to learn how to talk. You spoke, you were in community. You learned from those around you. Create that in your classrooms and your learning spaces. I challenge you and invite you to that. Dr. Cooper?
Okay, last one, probation. So basically the gist of it is our students on probation are not doing as well. They're not experiencing the 6 success factors. They're not experiencing these transfer capacity building factors at the same level as students who never get on probation. So they're disadvantaged in so many ways. We talked about many of them earlier. The other thing is they were also more likely to talk about and have a higher experience or higher level of experience with challenges, and you can see the list of them there. But all these are non-academic challenges, right? These are challenges that happen outside the classroom, but obviously affect the classroom. So we just need to understand that our students on probation, they're struggling in not just academically. We must look at more holistic approaches to helping students. First, let's try to see if we can help students avoid it in the first place, right? What can we be doing to help students avoid probation? But for those who do find themselves there, what are we doing? Why our focus needs to be on getting them off probation, not keeping them on it, not making them go through steps just because, and this very punitive nature. The aha moment I had was I did this presentation at the Emoja conference, and that conference, if you're not familiar, is mostly students. It's mostly students who attend that, and then it's probably almost like a 2-to-1 ratio. And so when you prepare to present to students, you got to present a little bit differently because they don't know our acronyms, they don't work here, right? But it's so wonderful to hear their experiences directly. And when we talked about probation, they talked about, first of all, we weren't even like talking the same language at first, because I'm sure that happens to y'all. Like you're talking to a student and you realize you all are using the same words, but you're not talking about the same thing. They were talking about SAP and how much that is helping them and how they're just struggling to try to get off SAP or academic probation, progress probation, all of these things, and that they don't understand why we're making it harder. And so I originally was thinking to myself that whole question of like, who came up with this probation thing? Why do we even call it that? This doesn't make any sense. But in that session, it all became clear to me. We set up this system to mirror the criminal justice system. It is punitive, not rehabilitative. So you need to re-examine your probation to figure out, is it punitive or is it rehabilitative? Are you really trying to help students get off probation? Is it designed with that in mind, or are you just making them jump through hoops to prove that they belong to stay. They deserve to stay, that they belong here. Really need to think about that. Just shout out to Academic Senate. They saw our study last year and passed this resolution last spring about trying to change this language and the processes at a state level, which requires changing Title V. I continue to push them. We did a couple of webinars on these. They're on their Academic Senate website. There's one on our website. Again, Moore Park College has shown a way, I'm not going to say the way, but shown a way for how you can go about changing, again, not just the name, but everything that comes along with it, and shifting away from this punitive, criminally justice-based programming.
Wait, can we go back there for 1 second? Thank you, Dr. Cooper. So if you could see in the second whereas there, changing the word probation because it's deficit-minded. So yes, the connotation of that criminality in that word, but also if we think about the way if AVC takes this challenge up to change, you have this statewide support here from all areas, is thinking about it in an asset-minded lens. So that not just decriminalizing the language, but also, and Dr. Cooper did find this, so I want to give you a shout out and credit. Seminole State College in Florida has a really good model of this is what I mean by shifting even away from deficit-minded, because you have some schools out there right now changing it from academic probation to academic notice. I don't know about you, when I get a notice, if I ever get a, not that I ever did, but if I got a notice that I didn't pay my car lien, my note, right? It's like, oh, notice is still like, oh, still in that deficit, right? So how do we change it to asset-minded? So Seminole State said the 3 rankings: good standing, academic support, academic supervision. So those other 2, academic support, which would be that like probation, and then academic supervision. Wow. Doesn't that feel better? That's asset-minded shifting of the language, so that the onus is on us as an institution, not blaming the students. So wait, I have to tell you this little story. So how many of y'all, like I think during pandemic, maybe you started making bread, doing things, that was like, all of the popular things. Well, I decided in pandemic, I'm going to learn how to be a plant parent. Like learn how to keep a plant alive. So I, bought a couple plants. And so if you think about it, I know this happened to me. When you get a plant, and my plant started after a couple of weeks not doing so well, I didn't put it in a plant intervention program. I didn't make a label that said plant on notice. What did I do? I gave it more water, gave it more sun. My issue was I had it in a dark place, so I put it in more sun. Give it more food, more water, more sun. So I'm inviting us to think about, what do we do in our practices? Again, there is an element of judgment, but with no shame and no blame. What are we doing that is creating that tension and that trauma, even if that's not what we intended to do? So shifting out of a deficit-minded language into even asset-minded language is something that I encourage us to do. I'm gonna go ahead and go in. So I know we only have check my time. I know we're at time, so a couple more minutes. I do recommend Goldie Mohammed. She talks about, if our students are struggling, if we're gonna be looking at academic probation and interventions, then let's think about, is it our students struggling or is it our pedagogy struggling? When she said that, I was like, wow, yes, it's that whole idea of being inquisitive about what we're doing, that it's not what's wrong with them, but what can we do to be better? So shifting that, and really, like I said earlier, leveraging the amazing, great human beings that our students are and building upon that. And then like what we talked about with Dr. Jill, right? Wraparound service, keep doing those, providing basic needs, childcare, housing. I heard Dr. Jill talking about your housing grants coming. Also think about some other things. Think about alternative grading methods. And if you wanna know more, I know we're at time, but alternative grading methods, Think about flexible schedules. We talked about looking at what you can do for warm welcome and a commitment in your syllabi, and then building those relationships. I mean, I know I'm like full of the metaphors today, but really think about this. If you anyone in here a designer, or if you have a design program, think about when you are making a dress. What is the first thing you do? You take the model's measurements, right? You ask the customer what they want and you take their measurements. It's basically what are they dreaming, but you got to get it right so that it fits the model. So if you create that dress and you have the customer, the model, try it on and it doesn't fit, do we blame the model? Do we blame the customer? So let's think about how are we taking our measurements, what are we doing in our processes, and what can resonate better for our students so that they can be successful. And that means then doing our own work on our own cultural humility, whether that be personal, institutional, or both, with that curiosity and wonder to come at it with a place of love with no shame and blame. Dr. Cooper.
I like that plant one. That I'm also plant challenged, black thumb kind of person, and so all the plants in my house are outside the house so that the gardener can keep them alive, because I'm not allowed to have plants on the inside of the house, because if they come in, they die.
Yet.
And well, we can talk about that later. But I like the idea that if I'm failing the plant, it's not the plant's fault. I'm not going to put that cracked
Put
me
it
up.
on notice.
Well, I just the idea of putting a little sign on my plant, so like when people come over and they see a dying plant or a dead plant, they don't blame me. It's the plant. This plant is on notice. I have told it that it needs to not die, but it's not my fault. No, it's totally my fault. I get it. I'm challenged. That's fine. I don't think we have time for questions, but again, we'll stick around, and if you want to ask questions, please do. There's QR codes. We've given this presentation to Dr. Paquette, and so she will make that available to everyone. But the report, this one has the survey findings. There's 3 of them that have the quantitative and interview focus group findings. There's also links in here to some of the things that we talked about, to the webpage and a couple of the resources that Michelle talked about. And we just want to thank you for staying, for your attention. We hope that something resonated with you today, and thank you.
Pat yourself on the back. You deserve it. And then we're going to pass it over to Dr. Paquette, right, to do a survey. Right. Please, friends, stay.
So before you go, I want to thank you. I want to take a moment to, thank you so much. This has been very informative, eye-opening, and you gave us a lot of ideas for things we can start working on. So thank you so much. Dr. Zalat had to go, run for another meeting, but thank you, and we'll see you again. Please don't leave. We have a QR code. Please get your phones out. Give us feedback on how today went. We would really appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you so much. And go grab lunch and go to your afternoon sessions. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mistake him for your man, you and take. See, I know that you may be just a bit jealous of me, but you're blind if you can't see that his love is all in me. See, I tried to hesitate, I didn't want to say what he told me. He said without me he couldn't make it through the day, and that a shame. Maybe you misunderstood.